So here we have China once again acting belligerently and very aggressively towards the Filipinos in the South China Sea. This is a part of their ongoing effort to try to exert dominance over what they believe is their controlled territory in the South China Sea. Now, the U.S. Indo-Pacific Command Chief Admiral Samuel Paparo said Thursday that American forces are prepared with a range of options to address growing aggression in the disputed South China Sea if directed to act alongside the Philippines. Now, he refused to provide specifics, but Paparo confirmed the U.S. military's readiness to act following consultations with an ally that it shares a defensive treaty with. Now, Paparo's comments were made during a news conference addressing China's, quote, gray zone tactics, which involve aggressive maneuvers like water cannons firing at these merchant ships, ship blockades, and pretty much anything that stops just short of armed conflict so that they won't trigger the Philippines' 1951 Mutual Defense Treaty with the U.S. Now, this treaty commits both nations to mutual defense in the case of an actual armed attack, which China has not done. Now, Paparo has said, we certainly have prepared a range of options, and U.S. Indo-PACOM stands ready, if so called, after consultations in accordance with the treaty, to execute those to shoulder with our ally, end quote. In response to rising tensions between Beijing and Manila, Paparo reiterated the U.S. military's willingness, after treaty discussions, to escort Philippine ships in the South China Sea, and this could potentially lead to a direct confrontation with Chinese vessels. Now, if China acts aggressively towards U.S. ships escorting Philippine vessels in the South China Sea, several outcomes are possible depending on the nature and severity of the incident. At the very least, the U.S. would respond with warnings, increased military presence, or defensive measures to protect its ships and personnel. A direct confrontation could occur if China's actions are perceived as an immediate threat, and this could range from minor skirmishes involving warning shots or low-level engagements to more severe clashes on the open seas if either side decides to escalate the conflict. Now, an aggressive encounter could lead to a significant diplomatic crisis. The U.S. and China might engage in heated diplomatic exchanges. There might be shared sanctions or other non-military responses. International bodies might get involved, or allies might be called upon to mediate or intervene. Now, if hostilities do escalate, the U.S. could invoke treaties or request support from other allies in the region, such as Japan or Australia, potentially drawing more countries into dispute and raising the to potentially drawing more countries. Now, if hostilities escalate, the U.S. could invoke various treaties they have across the region and request support from allies such as Japan or Australia, potentially drawing more countries into this dispute and raising the risk of a broader regional conflict. Now, engagements in the South China Sea could disrupt shipping lanes and economic stability, prompting a response from other international community members such as Great Britain, who rely on this area to allow for free trade. And this obviously will impact global markets. These tensions have escalated as Chinese forces have continually harassed Philippine Navy and Coast Guard ships, as well as merchant ships in the South China Sea, and it has resulted in collisions such as we've seen here, and those collisions have caused injuries. China claims these actions are defensive, asserting the Philippines is intruding on its territory as outlined by their controversial map that originally showed the 9-dash line. Meanwhile, the Philippines references a 2016 international ruling that invalidates China's broad claims over the South China Sea. As this continues, it looks like the U.S. will likely become more involved in countering China's illegal and belligerent acts in the South China Sea. We just don't know yet what extent that will be. We just don't know yet to what extent the U.S. is willing to go to defend the Philippines and its interests in the region, specifically when it comes to open trade and countering what is obviously a very belligerent China in that region.